Hey everybody, welcome back to Deconstructive Critics. I'm your host NGS, and it's time once again for a DCC update. The story of the day: could Sony sell the Spider-Man film rights back to Marvel? Now before we get into this, I want to give you guys a brief little history lesson, I'll try to make it brief, on Spider-Man's history as it pertains to Marvel and Sony. A preconceived notion that I think a lot of people here in the community sort of wrap their head around is that since Sony has been making the Spider-Man films since practically the dawn of this century, there is no way in heck that Marvel and their cinematic universe will ever be able to have a crossover. There is no chance of Spider-Man fight alongside Iron Man and kicking ass with Captain America. None of that's going to happen. But what some people don't understand is that while that may have been true 5, 6 years ago, that's not the case now. Link down below in the description for a full rundown on the article, but basically, a couple years back, Marvel actually purchased more stake in the Spider-Man film license than they ever did before. They are now in charge of the advertising and the promotional side of the Spider-Man film character. That is how we were able to see him fight alongside other Avengers characters in various commercials for Target toys, etc., etc., etc. Marvel doesn't own the entire rights to the character, but they do own more of a stake in it. That was not the case back when Sam Raimi was directing it under that original contract. So what about a future crossover film, you say? How would that be done? Well, basically, all Sony would have to do is send out the character to Marvel. Just do a little bit of a negotiating because it's a win-win scenario. It's beneficial for both parties. Marvel would be able to use the character and have him interact with their characters and tell their stories, but Sony, on the other hand, they would be getting bank off of it. All they'd have to do is just license out the character, and it's easy money. Just have to do some contractual mumbo-jumbo, and hey, bing bang, everybody goes home. We pop in some champagnes, we hop in the hot tub. You know, it's great stuff there. But basically, one thing I want you guys to take away is that a crossover, the potential crossover between Sony's character Spider-Man and Marvel's MCU is not completely out of the ballpark. But what does this story entail? Well, basically, Sony is in the red. Sony's management for the past couple of years hasn't really been too great. They've gone through some restructuring in the past year or so. They've appointed a new CEO, and they're definitely doing some much-needed revisions, seeing what works and what doesn't work in both the gaming division, television division, and all parts of the company. And the film division is no exception. Sony has had major success with movies like Skyfall and Amazing Spider-Man last year, but they've had a lot of little flops with little comedy films that nobody wanted to see or they got poorly received. So they're attempting to make some more money on this to make their film division profitable. And what two licenses are profitable for them? Well, Resident Evil and Spider-Man, of course. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I am not worried about the Spider-Man film rights reverting back to Marvel, but at the same time, I'm not going to completely write it off. So I want to tackle some of the positives that could come from this, and that's mainly case in point, you wouldn't have to do any sort of contractual obligations as far as crossovers are concerned. You could definitely 100% see Spider-Man show up in a future Marvel film, or you could see Captain America show up in Spider-Man's films, etc., etc., etc. So that's one of the more positive things I see coming out of this deal. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you know, I just am worried because the way Marvel's been handling things, I know a lot of people like to say that they've had great success with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which they have had, but they've had equal amounts of success with not getting some of the characters right. You know, it's like one step forward, two steps back with them. Sure, the movies are good, but certain characters, personalities, traits, such as Loki in the first Thor movie and several other characters, they just didn't get right. And that's what I'm worried about with Spider-Man, because we've already been through 3 Spider-Man movies where they didn't get the characters right. We got one where they did. We have another one coming out next year. So, you know, I don't want to go through another scenario where they fuck up one character royally and we got to wait for another reboot just to get this iconic character right. You know, it's that sort of stuff that does scare me. They also do have several contracts in place that they do have to honor. Andrew Garfield, Shailene Woodley, Emma Stone, they are all signed on for a 3rd installment. So hopefully there will be no contract breaking. I think that'd be really, really dumb for Marvel in this situation, considering that the character has gained a lot more mass appeal with the reboot, and you know, people are attuned to this character. So if they were going to reboot it again after like a second movie, if Gwen Stacy dies, you know how many people would be pissed off about that? Now that's just me, you know, doomsday theorying the worst case scenario possible. I doubt that's going to happen. I think Marvel is going to continue with the characters for a third movie, fourth movie, and all they'd have to do is just shove them into the Avengers some way. But, you know, that's some of the stuff that does scare me. I just don't want them to rush Spider-Man in there and have him just web slinging just cuz. You know, there's got to be some depth with it. And that applies to not only Spider-Man, but a lot of other Marvel characters. You don't just rush these characters in there just cuz. And that's one of the things that I think Sony definitely had an understanding on. The people who worked on The Amazing Spider-Man, most of them worked on the other Spider-Man movies, so you know, they had 3 movies to see what they did wrong with the character, and they came out with this reboot, and they did the character right, you know? So these people have more of an understanding, and they have to get this thing right this time around, and they can't just, you know, BS with the fans all over again. Sure, it made them money, but, you know, they want to give more respect to the character, which is something that I do greatly appreciate with the guys over at Sony. And really, if Marvel does some bullshit Superior Spider-Man, or if they shove in Miles Morales in there, it's not going to be completely out of this world, because considering the fact that Sony was the one who was in charge of the Spectacular Spider-Man series, which everybody loves, and Marvel is the one who canceled that in favor of Ultimate Spider-Man, yeah, things are looking pretty good on Sony's side as far as keeping true to the character, as opposed to Marvel and Spider-Man. Marvel, Spider-Man does not mix at the moment. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Do you want to see Spider-Man's film rights revert back to Marvel? Do you ever think that they are going to keep these characters in line and we won't suffer the dreaded third movie curse? Because we've had it with Iron Man, we've had it with Batman Nolan, and now if we have it again with Spider-Man, I'm just going to be I don't even know. I don't even know. So I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I'm GS signing off of Deconstructive Critics.